We'll start in a couple of minutes. Okay, I think we can start. Okay. So in our previous class, we have discussed about the different types of microscope. Because the cells are so small, we cannot visualize them with our naked eye. We need some kind of instruments so that we can look at the cells. So in our earlier class, we have discussed about the simple microscope and the compound microscope. Okay. We were just about to start about the electron microscope. Okay. So maybe one question I will just ask before we go into the electron microscope. What is the nature of light that is used in the simple and compound microscope?
Invisible
So the
light.
light that we can see.
The visible
That is
light.
the visible light. Okay, good. And when we want to see something that is even smaller than a cell, we need something that is giving much higher magnification. Okay, so we need something like an electron microscope. Okay, because you know electrons are very small. Okay, how small an electron? It is smaller than an atom. Okay, because an atom is made up of the nucleus, the protons, neutrons and electrons, and the electrons are so small and they are revolving around the nucleus. So you know that electrons are very small, and if you use a beam of that electrons which are already so small, you will be able to look at structures which are bigger than that. Okay, so here we will see what we are seeing here is a electron microscope. Okay, this long tube like a structure. Okay, one complete dedicated room has to be given for an electron microscope with its own power setup and vacuum generation, because inside this tube there is will be total vacuum. On the top here the electron beam generator will be there. Okay, you will study in your chemistry cathode ray experiment. Okay, cathode
Yes,
rays.
sir. We have studied last time.
Yes, so in that cathode rays will be produced on the one side. Okay, and there is a vacuum inside the tube. Same principle is there here also, same principle. Okay, so inside there will be vacuum, there are the cathode rays which will be generated at one end, and that rays will be moving in this particular direction. We will be changing the focus of the beam of the electron using magnets, because you know electron beam is having negative charge. It is having, it will deflect with the magnetic field. You can use the magnet as a lens. So here there will be some lenses which are made up of magnets on the either side. And here in the middle there is the specimen holder where you can keep some kind of sample that you want to see. For example, if you want to look at the virus, okay, the virus is smaller than a cell. The cell you can see with a compound microscope, but can you see the virus with a compound microscope?
No, sir.
We cannot see. So if you want to look at the virus, how that virus is looking like, where it is there, so for that you need electron microscope. Okay, so a sample in which you are suspecting that there may be virus or viral particles, that can be kept in this electron microscope. You cannot look at live, okay, living cells cannot be seen under the electron microscope because these are high energy. Okay, the electron beam is high energy. The visible light is no problem, no. Any living organism is having problem with visible light? No one has a problem with
No,
visible
sir.
light. But electron beam is high energy. Okay, very high energy, and therefore any living organism, it can have, okay, damage its DNA and its cell structure. So we have to fix it. Okay, we have to kill, we have to make some sections, we have to fix it, and those we will be observing here. So the beam is going to hit that sample. So in that sample, wherever there is some structure is there, there the electrons will fly off this side, that side, okay, because they hit it. Okay, and wherever the sample is very transparent type, it will pass through it. Okay, in that way you will be able to get a negative image down here in the screen. You can see that on a computer screen also. Okay, so overall the electron microscope looks something like this. Okay, and an electron microscope, we are able to visualize very small structures which are there even inside the cell. Okay, nanometer resolution, we can see that one. Okay, and we will summarize simple microscope, compound microscope, electron microscope. Okay, who invented simple microscope? Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Okay, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, he was the first person to look at the microorganisms. Okay, the compound microscope was invented by Robert Hooke. He coined the term cell. Okay, both of this we have discussed. Next, if you compare the design of the simple microscope, it has a single biconvex lens, whereas a compound microscope has two biconvex lens and one concave mirror for illumination. Okay, illumination means for lighting purpose, to get that light on the sample. And for an electron microscope, we have powerful magnets as lenses. The source of the light, the source of the light for simple and compound microscope is visible light, whereas for electron it's electron beam. If you look at magnifications for simple microscope 200x, and in a compound microscope it is a 10 times more, okay, 2000x, and in an electron microscope sorry, it is almost coming to 2 million times you are able to magnify. Okay, so basically in a microscope, what we are getting, we are getting optical zoom. We are using what? Lenses, optical zoom. After you took the photo, you can photo also we can magnify, no? On the screen we will do like this to see that
Yes,
photo in
sir.
the, okay, that is what zoom? That is a digital zoom, that is not optical zoom. Optical zoom means with the lens you are getting that zoom. Okay, and what zoom you are using on a screen digitally, those things are digital zoom. Okay, it has a very small limitation. Digital zoom is not going to give you much details. Okay, next we are moving to an important part of the chapter, which is called the cell theory. Cell theory. So this cell theory was proposed by three scientists, first by Schleiden and by Schwann. Matthias Schleiden, Theodor Schwann. Okay, so one was a botanist, the other was the zoologist. Both the scientists, what they saw, that all living organisms, they are made up of cells. Okay, small structures which are called cells, which they say is the smallest unit of the structure. Okay, so one whole plant may be there, one whole animal may be there, but individually they are all made up of very small units of a structures called a cell. Another thing is that the cell is also a unit of function. That means individual cell is going to act as a functional unit, and many of these cells will come together to perform different functions, or together they will perform one function. In this way, the cell itself is a unit of function. Later, Rudolf Virchow, another scientist, he proposed an addition to this cell theory, which states that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. For example, you are very inquisitive person, you are looking under the microscope at different types of samples, suddenly you found one cell, okay, that is having two eyes and two horns. Okay, so you are, oh wow, this is a new type of cell. So do you think that this cell would have come by magic?
No, sir.
Definitely there must be a cell before it, and from that cell only it will arise. Okay, this concept that cells will arise from pre-existing cells was proposed by Rudolf Virchow. At that time these things were not so obvious. Like today we feel, oh, of course today any cell is there, means some cell may be there before, we are taking for granted, but at that time people are not accepting. Okay, so what does it mean that if a cell is what you are observing today, it has come from something that existed before it? That means cells are dividing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there is a cell division, there is a cell division. Okay, so the concept that cells divide, that there is a division of the cells, was possible by the proposal from the Rudolf Virchow. Okay, so point number 1 and 2 proposed by Schleiden and Schwann, they are saying that cells are the unit of a structure and they are the unit of function of all living organisms. Whereas the third point, it says that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Okay, that is simple cell theory. Okay, and based upon this cell theory, what we are knowing, that it is the cell is a structural unit, functional units, that also that cells will die and they are replaced. Okay, and most of the life may be starting from a single cell. So this cell division concept, if we keep on going backwards, oh, some cell is coming from the cell that was before it, okay, then that cell from where it came, okay, then that cell from where it came. In that way, if you keep on going like that, at one point of time you will reach a stage where life will start from a single cell. Okay, so that is the kind of what we are able to interpret, okay, what we are able to understand from the given theory, that is the cell theory. Any doubts you have in this one? Okay,
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
So, what was the experiment done by Virchow to say that the cells arise from pre-existing cells? What was the experiment?
Okay, this is experiment part is not part of our syllabus. Okay, so we will not worry about that one. But there are many other experiments that were performed after Virchow. okay, to prove that what Virko is telling is true, that there is no spontaneous generation of life, okay, by Louis Pasteur and so on. Okay, they did many experiments. So those things in your future classes, a little bit on evolution you will learn. Okay, so these experiments came later on to prove. Okay, so we will not worry about the experiment now. Next important part is there are different aspects of the cells. A living organism may be made up of only one cell, okay, or it may be made up of many cells. If it is made up of only one cell, what it is called?
Unicellular organism.
Uni. Uni means one. Unicellular organism. If it is made up of many cells, it is called multicellular organism. Okay, simple, easy. Some examples of the unicellular organisms include bacteria. Okay, all of these unicellular organisms that we are seeing here, we can't see our naked eye. We need a microscope to look at them. Okay, bacteria, amoeba, euglena, paramecium, chlorella, yeast. Okay, if you take little bit of pond water, okay, in the pond water you will be able to see bacteria, or if you take curd, for example, in curd you will be able to see lactobacillus bacteria. Okay, if you take pond water, in that you can see amoeba, euglena, because this you see green color is because some photosynthesis is going on. Okay, they look like very small plants or something. Okay, algae kind of stuff. So amoeba, euglena, paramecium, chlorella, yeast. Okay, like this we will see more such examples in your coming classes. So these are all made up of a single cell. Okay, if you look at them, because we are looking at the microscope, it may seem like, okay, this is one very big structure, maybe it is more cells. No, but this is only one cell. One cell is one organism. Okay, it is able to do all the functions by itself, one independent organism. Okay, so therefore it is unicellular. A multicellular organism, okay, there can be taken like two types. They are made up of few cells, and others are made up of too many cells, millions and billions of cells. Spirogyra, volvox, tardigrades, okay, this kind of small multicellular organisms are there. Okay, they don't have many cells, they have few cells. Okay, Spirogyra you can see in the pond water. Okay, this like this one is one cell. Okay, if you see, this one is one cell, this part is one cell. Like this, the cells are joined to each other, they form something like a thread like structure. Okay, if you see volvox looks very beautiful under the microscope. Okay, each of these small balls are one cell, and such small balls, they will be under one big sphere. Okay, inside one, so they form a colony. Okay, like a colony, that's a volvox. Okay, tardigrades are like small animal, very small animal, they look like it is coming from some outer space or something. Okay, seems like the face is having some camera or something. It looks like an outer space, but it is a real small animal. Okay, it is made up of very few cells, tardigrades. Okay, so these are a few examples of the organisms with few cells, but they are also multicellular. A human body, for example, is a humans are multicellular, plants, animals, most of them are multicellular. So we have so many different types of tissues. Okay, so this is just for an idea how the organisms are made up of cells. They may be made up of one cell, many cells, or lots, many of the cells. Okay, next. Another aspect about the cells is their size. Okay, size. Which is the largest cell?
So ostrich egg.
Yes, this ostrich egg is
So
just,
that also before the development begins.
yes, egg. Yeah, it's an egg. Ostrich egg. This ostrich egg is one cell. Okay, huge, one single cell. A chicken egg is also one cell, one huge cell. Okay, we should not think that inside there are many cells. That's only one cell. Much smaller frog egg, but frog egg also can be seen. Okay, frog egg is about 1 mm diameter. Okay, 1 mm, 1 millimeter frog egg. Okay, the human egg, it comes much more smaller than that, and again much more smaller than that one, coming in the micrometer scale. Okay, between 10 micrometer and 100 micrometer, you have the animal cells and plant cells. Okay, micrometer means 10 to power of minus 6 meter. Micrometer. A bacterial cell is 1 micrometer. Okay, roughly means general size estimation, 1 micrometer, 2, 5, 6, like that micrometers. Different size will be there, but it is in the range of relative size 1 micrometer size. The viruses, okay, a flu virus is much larger virus, flu virus. Okay, this flu virus is something, we say flu, like cold and cough kind of flu. This virus also causes this cold and cough. That's a flu virus. It's also a bit large, almost coming close to the size of a bacteria. Okay, still we are going lower, then we are able to see these are the molecules, the biomolecules, which are the proteins, lipids. Okay, lipids are nothing but fats and oils. Okay, fats and oils. Proteins, all of you know what are proteins. Okay, these are coming, these molecules are coming how much range? 1 nanometer, 10 nanometer. Nano, nano means 10 to power of minus
Minus
9,
7.
9, 9, 9, 9 meter, 10 to power of minus 9 means after 1 how many zeros you will put?
9.
9 zeros you will put. Okay, it will become 1 nanometer. That many times it is less than a meter. 10 to 10 to power of 6 times, if it is less, that means 1 million times it is less. Okay, because million and billion, that is American English, no, but these days we are using very commonly 1 million. Okay, in India we say lakhs. How many lakhs? Okay, so 10 lakhs is 1 million. Okay, so here 1 nanometer, 10 nanometer. Okay, the range of the biomolecules. Atoms are so small, zero point 0.1 nanometers. Okay, very small, zero point 0.1 nanometers. So you see, using the electron microscope we are able to see large atoms up to, we are using say 100 microns. Okay, bacteria, plants, we are using this electron microscope. For light microscope, like compound microscope, up to bacteria we can see, but we can't see viruses and all. okay, and rest more than 1 millimeter, a little bit less than 1 millimeter, we are able to see with our naked eye itself, we can see. Here some GK type of questions are there, like smallest bacteria is mycoplasma. Okay, mycoplasma, which is the smallest cell. If the question is which is the smallest cell, it is a bacteria which is called the mycoplasma. The largest cell is the ostrich egg, and the longest cells are the nerve cells. Okay. Anything you want to ask?
Sir, mycoplasma is also known as mytoplasma.
No.
Okay.
Mycoplasma is a special type of bacteria. Okay, it's so tiny. It is also infectious. Also, it also causes infection. Okay. Next, we are looking systematically one after the other. What are the different features of a cell? Okay. What is the size? What are the shape? How many number of cells are there in a living organism? Now, next thing that we are looking at is efficiency. What is efficiency?
Sir, efficiency means the output.
Okay. Can you elaborate, Rishi?
Sir, how much input machine is taking that and the output which it is giving.
Hmm. That means, suppose we are converting one form of energy to another form, because you know that we cannot create energy, we cannot destroy energy. We can only transform it from one form to another. That is the law of conservation of energy. Okay. Similarly, there is a law of conservation of mass. All these things we cannot create, we cannot destroy, we can transform from one form to another. So, for example, in a hydroelectric dam, the river is flowing, and there is potential energy is there on the top, because a dam is stopping the water. No? It stop the water. So, there is a potential energy on the top, and then the water is going to fall downwards. There is a kinetic energy. Okay, this kinetic energy of that water has to be converted into electrical energy. Okay, whether this conversion of kinetic energy to electrical energy, whether it is 100% efficient?
No, sir.
Okay, in nature there is no machine that is having 100% efficiency. No machine till date. A 100% efficient machine has not been invented, cannot be created. It is hypothetical. Okay, hypothetical, we cannot do it. Why? Because when we are converting energy from one form to another, there will always be some loss of energy. Loss of energy, that may be in the form of some kind of heat or something else. Okay,
Friction.
yeah, friction, something may be there. Okay, so there will always be some kind of loss. So the question here is, we are talking about efficiency of the cell. So for example, if you take a cell is something like this. Okay, inside the cell there are some small structures are there. Okay, this cell needs some food from outside, no? Some nutrients from outside it needs, and also whatever waste is being generated, that also has to be removed outside. Any living system, it needs nutrient from outside, and it will want to remove the waste from its system. Okay. So where this process is going to take place, it is going to take place on the surface of the cell, correct? So if a cell has a lot of surface, that means more area is available for the exchange of food and removal of the waste, correct? Suppose we are comparing three types of cells. Three cells are there, okay, and we are imagining the size of the cell to be, the shape of the cell to be in the form of a cube. Whether A is going to have more surface area or C is going to have more surface area?
C.
Definitely C is very large cell. Okay. Elephant has more surface area or ant has more surface area?
Elephant.
Elephant has a lot of,
Elephant.
has a more surface area. Now little bit we are going with a twist. We want to also look at the volume. The volume of this A is large or volume of C is large?
C is large.
C.
Definitely large, because it is very big. Elephant is very big, it has a lot of volume. But then what if you take the ratio, surface area to volume ratio? Okay, you are dividing surface area with its volume. So what you are getting, 6 divided by 1, so 6 is to 1. When each side of the cube is 2 centimeters, then surface area is coming 24 and volume is coming 8. So the ratio is coming 3 is to 1. Similarly, if the sides of the cube is a 3, okay, I think we are overshooting the time a bit. Okay, so then what happens is the ratio of the surface area is 2 is to 1. That means if you are increasing the size, what is happening? The surface area to volume ratio is decreasing.